Hello, my name is Hector Alvarez, and I'm the Education Director at the Greater Brunswick Charter School.
Hi, my name is Daisy Amador, and I am the third grade teacher in Spanish World.
Here at GBCS, we have a kindergarten up to fifth grade dual language program. So today, we're going to review the components and benefits of the dual language program.
So before we continue with this presentation, we are going to watch a short video, and we would like you to keep these questions in mind. What is the importance of bilingualism, and what do you know about dual language programs?
Now, what's important about being bilingual? It definitely enriches and enhances mental development. It also gives the child the flexibility in thinking and reasoning. It definitely foster better listening skills on the students, and it also enhance the culture as well. When we're talking about the dual language, we definitely see that the students will benefit, or anybody will benefit from both languages, basically understanding both and building from each other. Now, let's also keep in mind that one language does not interfere to the second language. So someone can definitely learn two languages or even more at the same time.
It also gives a child the ability to communicate with more people. For instance, 2 years ago, I had a student who is African American and went on vacations to Mexico. This student did not speak any Spanish at all at home, but because he was in a dual program, he was able to communicate with people in Mexico, and he was able also to translate for his parents. It also fulfills college language requirements, and it increases the job opportunities in many careers. Um, I also learned that recently 9 out of 10 employers rely on bilingual or multilingual employees.
Now, when we're talking about learning a second language, we also have to keep in mind on the basic interpersonal communication skills, which are basically just the basic conversation that we have. And that's the difference between that and the cognitive academic language proficiency is that you or someone could actually have a conversation in a language, but that doesn't mean that they have the content language developed. So if you see a student playing in the playground speaking a language to someone, it doesn't mean when you give them a test they will do better in that test. So we also have to keep in mind that the basic interpersonal communication skills are different from the cognitive academic language proficiency. And in a dual language program, what we want to do, we want to make sure that their cognitive academic language is developed. Now we're going to see the definition of the dual language designs. In a dual two-way language immersion program model objectives, it basically develops bilingual, biliterate, and bicultural skills in English and Spanish or any other language. It definitely maintains academic achievement at or above grade level. And it promotes cross-curriculum tolerance, understanding, and appreciation. So once again, the purpose of being bilingual or the dual language is not only to be bilingual, but also to be bicultural and biliterate. Some of the features and variables of a dual language designs.
There are many dual lines. For instance, we can have in the morning English, in the afternoon Spanish. One day it can be Spanish, one day can be in English. It can be two days in Spanish, 2 days in English, and 5 days. It depends 1 week in Spanish, 1 week in English. This is a model at GBCS, which is 50-50. And or it can be others such as 6 days language blocks, rotation, um, and particular context in English.
So as Stacy said, there are different models, but here at GBCS, we use the 50-50 model, which is 1 week in English and 1 week in Spanish. And right now, we're going to have the opportunity to see a class going on in both.
Vamos a ver, ¿listos? Ok. Abren el libro. Abre su libro en la primera página. Están en frente. Les voy a decir que la revisión ya está correcta.
So we were able to see how we had Spanish world in which Miss Daisy was teaching in different centers, and the person that was filming was able to go to the next door to see the English world, and they were teaching exactly the same thing, the different activities, but the same skills. Now, what are some of the effective strategies and best practices? It's something that we want to keep in mind, and that these practices are not only good in dual language settings, but these are things that a teacher can definitely apply to any kind of settings. When it comes into effective strategies and best practices, we also have to keep in mind about the Shelter Instructional Observation Protocol model, in which we want to make sure that the students, whenever you're teaching, you're building a student's background knowledge. You focus on vocabulary. You also see the students' interaction and making sure that they are always engaged in the lesson, making sure that when you develop a lesson, you have comprehensive vocabulary.
So one of the strategies can be using cognates, and let's make sure that we explain what is a cognate versus a false cognate, but because it can make a big difference. This is the only time that for instance, in my case in Spanish world, we are able to have some English words. Other than that, let's try to make sure that we keep that fidelity to the language. If I'm teaching in Spanish, I have to speak in Spanish. And when the visual cues comes in place, make sure that our classroom it's all labeled with visuals, because we can label it with words, but sometimes words doesn't make a big impact, whereas if you have words and the visuals. Creative dramatic roles, this can also be a very effective strategy. One of the cases can be using readers theaters. Students love, even in Spanish, they love the readers theaters. And the manipulatives. Make sure that we also have manipulatives not only in math, but in other areas such as phonics, reading, writing.
When Daisy was talking about making sure that the class is interactive, also we're talking about the cooperative learning. In a dual language setting, it's important for the students to interact with others, for them to use their verbal skills. So having lessons that has to be cooperative definitely helps. Also having language bodies. When we're talking about language body, is you want to have a student that is dominant in one language to pair with someone that is dominant in the other language. That's therefore they can help each other support. In a dual language setting, we don't want translation. So we don't want the teacher to be translating. What we can do, we can have another student translating for the teacher. And that way, because whenever we're talking about translation, the brain becomes lazy. So if a student knows that teacher is going to translate, they're going to wait for the translation and they don't make the effort to learn that new language. We also have to keep mindful of the learning styles. We have to make sure that we incorporate lessons to fulfill everybody's learning styles. Total physical response, have a lot of movements for the students to do in the classroom. Definitely differentiating the work is important in a dual language setting, and also having realia, making sure that we have real objects in the classroom based on the lessons that we have, because that's going to help the students, the multilingual learners in this case. We have some additional resources, and let's also keep in mind that the development of two language during the early, in this case, childhood and elementary years benefits the brain through the development of great brain tissues density in areas related in language, memory, and attention.
It is important to maintain or keep a minimum of 5 years. So this is very important to also explain to parents that we want to keep our students to be in a dual language program at least 5 years or seven the best, so we can see their growth. Focus on the same academic curriculum. Also, making sure that, like Mr. Hector mentioned before, that when we are delivering the lessons, it has to be comprehensible for students, make it interesting and sufficient quality. We want to keep it at the student's level, a minimum of 50-50. So if we are having one group in Spanish world, they go to English world, and we are keeping a balance on both languages, not only in one language, but both. The balance of linguistic groups, we like we mentioned before, keeping a Spanish body or a language body. If one student is not stronger in one language, we can pair it with another student and they can help or collaborate with each other. Facilitate instruction using characteristics of effective strategies, what we went over before, and collaboration with parents and teachers, making sure that we have that communication, because at the end of the day, it's a teamwork.
So as we were saying earlier, being bilingual is definitely an asset, and there are a lot of benefits of being bilingual. Here are the components all together, the best strategies, and we're looking forward to continue here at GVCS applying these strategies to help the students to become not only bilingual, but also biliterate and bicultural. Thank you.
Thank you.